let's talk about ancient Egyptian harems and how they are not exactly the harems that you hear about from other Near Eastern civilizations. First, let's go over what the actual definition of a harem is. It is a domestic space that is reserved for women of the house of a Muslim family. It may house a man's wife or wives, young male children, unmarried daughters, female domestic servants, and other unmarried female relatives, possibly even including a man's mother. And in the past, during the era of slavery in the Muslim world, harems also housed enslaved concubines. All of these women were protected by eunuchs. A harem is often an enclosed space where no men can enter except the ruler at the time or the husband in this case, which also means that women could then not leave the area or have any other contact with men. When it comes to ancient Egypt, though, the word harem was used to refer to the women's quarters of a pharaoh's palace, but it is an anachronism. The women who would live in this section included the pharaoh's wives, their children, and maybe even his mother and sisters. But they didn't live in isolation from other men or the entire court. This was just their private space. In this case, essentially the word harem was used by previous scholars because it was the easiest way to refer to a very similar concept in the ancient Egyptian world. But now we know that it is no longer accurate based on the knowledge we have of how the women interacted with the rest of the court. The technical term in ancient Egyptian for the women's corners was the ipet, or the ipet nesu. Unfortunately, instead of being translated as women's quarters, women's apartment, women's quarters of the king, they were translated as harem, because again, that was the closest equivalent to the modern knowledge of those Egyptologists. But this becomes a problem when then you take your personal knowledge of either the current world or another ancient culture, and then you put that concept onto another culture when they have absolutely nothing to do with each other. We don't have much archaeological or physical evidence of any of these women's quarters in ancient Egypt, mostly because we don't have a lot of palaces that have been well preserved. But there is an interesting archaeological project called the Gurab Harem Palace Project that I would love to talk about in another video if you guys want.